You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MIAX is now trading options on the SPIKES Volatility Index, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with SPIKES. Learn more about SPIKES at www.miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for information purposes only and are not intended to provide and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Friday. It is back to its usual time of noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Yes, it is time for us to collectively view some volatility. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as this fine network, which most of you have been just binging all week long. Hope you're enjoying the content that's hitting you sometimes multiple times a day here. We'll keep you busy, keep you occupied, keep you engaged here on the network. We've got more coming at you later today. After VolViews, Advisor's Option coming at you hot and heavy. So if you like your double doses, going to get more of that today. Of course, wherever you're listening to this program, make sure you leave those reviews, those comments, so other folks can continue to discover and enjoy the network during these troubled times. More important than ever these days to have a sane source of content on these markets and on this volatility. So hopefully you like what you hear and you want to share it with the rest. If that's the case, make sure you get on out there and do just that. And of course, keep those questions coming. We do love to hear from you guys today. And who are we going to hear from on the old program today? We got someone doing double duty today from the land of the pit and also holding down the MIAX hot seat today. He is the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com by way of Carmen Lion Capital. Mr. G, welcome back to the program on this yet another crazy day that ends in Y in the market, sir. That would be your cue to speak. There you go, sir.
I know. And I still can't find the mute button.
There you go. So I put a lot of stock in you, and it is clearly not warranted.
It's like your 10-year investment in me hitting the mute button has been an utter and total failure. I just want to let everybody know, good option trader, bad guest host, investor right there.
Yes.
Mark
My training of you has unfortunately come to naught. Let's see if the show can be salvaged, though, as we head right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we do exactly that. We view the week that was and indeed still is from about trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity and all sorts of fun perspectives. And I mentioned, the MIAX hot seat not filled today. Well, the Rock Lobster's filling it because the folks in MIAX, they got some business on their hands. They decided apparently 3 options exchange is not enough to keep them busy and spikes and all the other good stuff. They're launching their MIAX Pearl Equities exchange today. So they're bringing that grand total to equities exchanges out there in the universe in the U.S. here. I think like 13, something like that. So yes, they're fighting on multiple fronts, fragmented options, fragmented equities. So we'll have them back on next week to talk about all that good stuff and a lot more. A lot of things popping off over there in the land of MIAX these days on the crypto front, futures front, equities front. It's expanding leaps and bounds, it seems like, day after day. So we'll have to hear from them next week about how all that went. What's going on right now in the markets is kind of a bit of a green end to what it was an otherwise red week, well, outside of yesterday. So the latter portion of the week really getting a little bit of a green tint. But it seemed like for a while now, maybe the worm turning a little bit, some folks souring on these markets, or at the very least taking some well-deserved profits off the table, because we saw a litany of litany of red on the screen for day upon day upon session, which was a rare thing because, we've been saying for so long, since March really, when is this rally going to take a breather? Well, it took a pretty nice breather over the last couple of weeks, and now last couple of sessions, it's back in the green with the S&P once again playing the Goldilocks there, up a little bit north of 0.75%, about 0.8% or so. The Dow, once again, the laggard, up about 0.5%, and NASDAQ's just waving its hat in the air and heading on off to the races, up about 1.4, closing in on 1.5% to the upside. And our old friends in the vol space, spikes, was a little bit north of the 29 handle coming into showtime. Now it's giving a little bit of that back up. It's about 28.90 or so. That puts it up still over 2 handles from last show, nearly 2.5 handles from where it was this time last show. And then we've got VIX cash coming into showtime, was a little bit north, was around 28.5. Now it's come down to about 28. That puts it up 1.5 shows. Actually, it looks like it's dipped below the 28 handle a little bit now as well. So still up, not quite 2 handles, almost 1.5 handles from where it was this time last show. And our old friend VVIX remaining stubbornly above that 99 level, just ever so briefly, ever so barely there. It's up about 3.5 handles. Remember, it had just broken 100, got down to 99 last show for the first time since February 20th. And we all know what an auspicious or perhaps inauspicious day February 20th was. Lots gone on since then, and VVIX has remained over 100 ever since until last week. And then it surged back up to close to 120 again, and now it's back down to right around threatening 100 to the dark side. And as we said before, this frame of reference for the vol of vol these days in the pandemic, a little bit different than it was prior to that. I don't think we're going to see a 75 anytime soon, certainly not before the election. So 100 is probably serving as that new 75 barometer. Once you get below it, interesting things may await. Let's turn now to the Rock Lobster. Let's see if he can find that big red mute button on his microphone and hopefully turn it off. Mr. Rock Lobster, do you concur with that, that 100 is the new 75 in VVIX, at least in the pandemic era? And then B, I heard Volman was making a little bit of a return appearance this week. What was on his radar? And then C, what was on your radar and the crazies in the pitch chat this week, sir? A lot to unpack there.
Oh, we had a ton. So a couple things is, so my thesis about the election is the more the rhetoric gets more crazy from each side, or just everybody involved, let's say, the more that the election is turning into the biggest earnings cycle ever, right? That's the thesis. So because everybody's waiting for November 3rd, and everybody's freaked out about, it kind of reminds me of the Y2K stuff. It could be, totally wrong, but remember like the Y2K, like the airplanes are going to fall out of the sky and the computers are going to stop and just all hell was going to break loose.
I do recall that. The nice thing about Y2K is that it was over like the next day, right? We knew right away whether that was a thing or not. I hope the way the vol is being priced in, they're not pricing and we know what the hell is going to happen this election for some time, sir.
Right. Which, now I'm feeling a little banana republic-y here because we've been holding elections for, let's call it a couple hundred years, right? Even during a civil war. And they could count the votes then. Like, why can't they count them now? I don't get what, like, all the technology and people worrying about, like, I don't understand how this became complicated. I don't understand why this is even a complicated issue. So like, I quite don't get why all the rules we had for the last election don't work for this one, and the rules we had for the one before and before and before and before. But I'm just a simple person, so these things, all this high politics confuses me. But for whatever reason, the market is pricing it like it's a big deal. The Nove 20 straddle is $28, and it was $28 last week. So we'll see how much decay actually comes out of it, how big that straddle actually is into the election. And you know, they're putting so much hype into it already. It's hard for me to believe that it carries over. I think even you know, regular, normally rational people are like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know. I think the Constitution sets out laws, and eventually we're just going to follow the laws. That's my guess, because I think all the participants are going to have to follow the laws. They're going to, you know, you don't have a choice. Or somebody arrests you. I don't know. So there is a provision, I believe. It's amazing how good that document is, as much as everybody poo-poos it all. I consider it was written 200 and something years ago when the world was a vastly different place. But anyway, from a vol point of view, the market has definitely bumped that vol up. It's a $28 straddle, and we'll just see how expensive it is, like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, you know, and what they're pricing that oddness. So hey, they're pricing it that way because someone's buying it, right? And they could be doing it because they're buying, you know, they might buy 1,350,000 calls. Who knows? There are 3,500 calls at SPX, or they're going to buy 1,003,000 puts in the SPX. Who knows? But that's going to affect the vol, and it's going to stay high until somebody goes and sells it. So I don't think that part is going away. So that's kind of been a subject, and sort of the grindy, malaise market, I think, is another subject as well in the pit chat. One thing I would say, though, is if you're looking at vol, like a lot of the tech stocks have quite a lot of vol. I don't know if you remember this stock called Apple. The intraday volatility.
Did they make the apple juice? Are they similar to Mott's?
Yes. They make lots and lots of apple juice. I think they sell $500 billion in apple juice.
I've heard it's a very lucrative business, that apple juice.
Yes, very good. But like intraday vol in Apple is like 90%. 90% for Apple. It's like that's 5-6% moves a day. Actually, today is one of the least active moves I've seen in the last week, and it's moved $3.50, which is still 3.5%, which is almost 50 vol. So there is some vol in the names intraday, even though the bigger indexes aren't moving a ton. And just the wet blanket of the election has vol price real expensive. So it's sort of I was trying to think of the malaise, factors when there's kind of an event on the horizon, the market doesn't know what to do, and it kind of just goes up and down and sideways. It doesn't really go anywhere. And for periods of time, that's just what the stock market is, right? Because nobody really knows what to do. So I think that's kind of what we have today. And I don't think it's going away, and I don't think it's going away for the election. The wild cards are that there's a clear winner on election night. Like everybody's like, okay, and one candidate concedes. Or they have a vaccine that is so awesome that everybody wants to take it. Those are the two things that could happen between now and November. I think that would affect the apple cart significantly. And as of right now, who knows if either of those will happen. So, and I think that's kind of where we sit.
You're right. Everything is pricing in so much madness, all based off this reporter asking about the transfer of power this week that set off this firestorm of controversy on both sides. And you're right, adding probably a little bit to the fun being priced out there in the vol space right now, which is getting me to think, we did it the last cycle in 2016, almost by accident. We kind of stumbled into a fun live election night show. The more I'm looking at this vol surface and the more I'm hearing all these rumblings of discontent, it makes me think maybe we need to do that again this year. Might be a fun time to kind of just have some live content. What do you think, Mr. Rock Lobster? Should we put out another election night special lest we have another crazy vol move in the after hours, sir?
Sure. What the heck? I'll be watching it anyway, so it's not it's not a whole lot of extra work for me.
Yeah, we can have a bunch of people, a bunch of guests kind of chime in throughout the night. It was me and Mr. Rhodes last time, but we could have you chime in. We could have the greasiest meatballs. By the way, the meatball, I heard a rumor, is he now south of the border? Is he officially a Texan? Is that the deal with him?
Well, I don't know. I don't think he's in Texas yet. I think he's no longer in Illinois.
Oh, we got rid of him finally. Okay, good. That at least is a step in the right direction, sir.
So you guys have the state back to yourself again, apparently.
That's good to hear. So yeah, he picked an inauspicious time to move down to Austin when there's hurricanes and wildfire smoke all converging on that scene simultaneously. So good luck to him. Moving is always fun, particularly through multiple natural disasters. Speaking of disasters, let's see what's going on out here on the aforementioned VIX futures term structure. Spike futures obviously still halted, still playing wait and see with their regulators out there. Hopefully the approval of this NASDAQ CME vol product will perhaps pave the way to get the gears going again on the Spikes futures, because we all want the futures. We want to trade the options. Still playing wait and see as the regulators figure their stuff out over there. Moving on out to the VIX futures term structure, aka the place where all of your vol questions, all the answers are lurking somewhere out here. You just have to find them. You have to dig. You have to be a little bit of a vol detective out here. Coming into showtime, we saw yet again an interesting structure out there. That ACH future, which has been the focus of so much consternation and hand-wringing pretty much since January, is about 4 points premium to the cash coming into showtime. That puts it actually about a quarter point away from where it was last show. So pretty much unched from where it was this time last show. We've got the no future ticking up a little bit as well. It's a little north of 5 points premium to the cash now, about 5.2. That puts it a little more than half a point, about 0.6 of a point higher than it was this time last show. So the front portion of that curve heading into and immediately around the election, getting a little bit frothier. And then we've got the D's future at about a 3.5 point premium to the cash. That's actually nearly a full point, about 0.8 lower than it was this time last week. So maybe, despite those comments you made earlier, maybe they're pricing in a little bit calmer post-election period. Let's see what's going on in Jan to make sure. Jan this week is a little over 2.5 point premium, about 2.6 point premium to the cash. That's actually over a point lower than this time last week, about 1 1/3 points last week. So maybe that's a sign that saner heads will prevail post-election. Mr. Rock Lobster, is that your reading as well? Are they pricing a little bit less craziness into the post-election period, or are you still reading a lot of crazy stuff?
Well, I think there's less, but I do believe, and a listener can correct me, but I had to try to search this. What happens if there is no electoral college result that can be delivered by election day? And I think the way the Constitution's written is that the Speaker of the House then becomes president. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I think they have to arm wrestle for it. I think it's how it goes.
So there will be somebody running the country, but it's possible everybody can cast their vote. There's total failure in counting the votes, which would be pretty awesomely, even the third world people are going to laugh at us. They're like, you guys are idiots. You can't count the votes after 4 months. And then Nancy Pelosi is the president of the United States. I just think just to cap 2020 off, that would be the last thing anybody would have guessed.
That would be pretty funny if all of it worked out that way. Having all the hand-wringing on both sides if it went that way. Of course, they still have until Inauguration Day. Trump would still be in office until then. So hopefully, even if they can't get an electoral college result immediately, which would be odd, then hopefully they could at least sort it out. I was down on the SIBO during all the Bush-Gore fiasco of 2000. Where were you, Andrew? Were you trading down during that period?
The PSE by then.
Oh, so you were eating a burrito at 6 a.m. on the Pecos. That's where you were.
Correct, exactly. Yeah, and that's what you were doing all day, basically. Because we're like, okay, oh, they found another bucket. My favorite thing was, remember when they used to deliver all the ballots? Like, they just found all these ballots somewhere.
Yeah, these were in the back room of a nursing home. Let's count these. I found it a little funny after a while. Like, they found ballots. Oh, good. So
But if your job is to deliver ballots, wouldn't you think that you would have just don't want them just laying around in some room somewhere, and you just take all the ballots and bring them where they're supposed to go on election day? Like, isn't that your ballot job? Like, I don't, that never.
Only when the outcome of the leadership of the world's most powerful democracy, only when that is in the balance, do those bucket of votes in the corner closet of the nursing home become relevant. But yeah, that was a time I don't think anyone wants to see a repeat of. I recall just day after day being down the trading floor, and everyone's effectively just glued to CNN and all the other outlets at the time. And here they are showing just close-ups of people, of course, the hanging Chad and all those infamous visuals. But every time there was a rumor, they found another box of ballots somewhere. The market would rally in one direction or sell off in the other. And it was a mad time, an extremely volatile time. And you had no idea what the outcome of the election was, and didn't for quite some time. And I don't think anyone wants to see a repeat of that. So yeah, hopefully calmer, saner heads will prevail. Hopefully, you're right, we can count the ballots. As technology has progressed, you're right, it seems like it's made it even more challenging to get that very basic task accomplished. But at least right now, I'm going to be the opposite of you, the diehard cynic. Usually I'm pretty cynical, but two of us being cynical on the show would be a little bit too much cynicism. So I will play the Uncle Mike role. I would be the diehard optimist today. And I will say, you know what? The lessening of a little bit of that vol in the Dees and Jan contracts, that means that they're pricing in a little bit saner time. And we're not going to not know who the president is, and we're not going to have the Speaker of the House running the show and all these other crazy scenarios that the Rock Lobster has put forth. If you don't like those scenarios, blame him. Send your email, andrew@optionpit.com. Let's head on out to the options landscape, see what's lighting it up out there. Spikes options actually quadrupling in OI, which is good to see because the futures aren't trading. So it's kind of hard to trade the options, but some folks out there are doing their darndest to sling a little bit of it. So we got positions all the way out to February of next year now. So some folks playing a little bit longer term in spikes. Once the futures come back, it'll be nice to see some actual paper going up out there as well, where we're still playing wait and see out there. VIX seemingly playing a little bit of wait and see as well. Not doing a heck of a lot really today. I mean, close to half its ADV. 191,000 contracts was what it was at right before showtime. I just refreshed it a little bit to go see if more has popped in. And they've done a whopping 5,000 more contracts since then. It's up to 196. So not a heck of a lot lighting up the tape out there today. ADV actually down from where it was this time last week. The ADV is back down under 400K again, 386. So that shows you, despite the fact that we had some sell-offs earlier in the week and then some of those warm turning type sessions, was it enough to really goose the volume up a lot this week? Let's look at the top 10 hot positions out there. Mr. Rock Lobster, I'm going to have you, let's play a fun guessing game. And we've talked for a while about how low the OI numbers are out there in VIX land and how little it takes you to break into the top 10 in the hot options, the top 10 in VIX land right now. So without looking, because the answer is right in front of you, I'm going to trust you on the honor system. Without looking, take a guess. How many contracts do you think it takes to break into the top 10 in VIX land today, sir?
Oh, for contracts for strike? I hate being Rock Lobster. I'm going to go low. I'm going to go like 10,000 contracts under there.
10,000 breaks you into the top 10 in VIX? God, that would be, I'm talking about open positions now, total aggregate positions.
Open interest. Sorry about that. I would say you need at least 50,000 to get there.
That's a sane guess. I would normal times, you could easily say over 100,000, maybe a $1.25 or even a $1.50, but not so much today, listeners. Pretty much cut that in half. 72,000 contracts is all it takes to break into the top 10 in VIX land today. That's a whole lot of nothing. And that gets you to the OCK 20 puts. 72,000 as well for number 9 for the OCK 28 puts. In fact, you have to go all the way up to number 1 to break into 100K. That's how light we are right now. Number 8, 73,000 of the OCK 22 puts. A little bit of a theme here. Number 4 is our first call on the list, or number 7, I should say. 4 from the bottom. 87,000 of the October 70 calls. Back to that 70 strike we've talked about a few times here. Number 6, 87,000 as well of the Jan 150s. Another one that just brings a smile to my face whenever I see it. Number 4, 90K of the Nov 65 calls. Number 3, 98,000. So we're getting close. Of the Jan 75 calls. Number 3, 99,000 of the Jan 27 calls. Can't quite get there yet. Number 2, also 99,890. So just a hair under of the Jan 40 calls. That means number 1 with a bullet, 123,000 of the October 25 puts. for some context, listeners, if you're new to the show, 123,000 usually isn't even enough to break into the top 10. Barely, maybe. So this is pretty light volume, pretty light OI out here right now. About 4.75 million contracts open out there in VIXLAND. About 3 million on the calls and about 1.75 million on the puts. Been searching for some paper out there today. There actually is one pretty active contract because there's a whole heck of a lot of nothing really trading today. Like I said, 196,000 contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. But in terms of what was most active in contracts today, the hot contracts today, NOV 21 puts actually doing some paper, 50,000. So that nearly 200K on the tape, roughly 1/4 coming in these NOV 21 puts. So someone's got a real axe to grind. They're 80% of those coming on the bid. So someone may be doing a little bit of the old premium harvesting out there. 14,000 of the NOV 25 puts and then about 11,000 of the NOV 20 puts. And that's kind of really about it for activity. OCK 30 puts also doing about 10,000 today. Not a heck of a lot else. Yesterday, did a little bit more paper, not much. 219,000 contracts on the tape yesterday. The most active contracts, OCK 25 puts. Yet again, that's our number one with a bullet out there in the OI today. So some of those trading hot and heavy yesterday to the tune of about 27,500. Then the OCK 29 puts with about 13,500 and about 13,000 of the DEES 21 puts, followed by about 10,500 of the October 30 puts. So a little bit of a theme to our hot options the last couple of sessions. Let's see if Wednesday can follow suit. Wednesday was a little bit more paper, about 319,000 contracts on the tape. Actually was the most active day of the week by a whole whopping 1,000. Most active contract on Wednesday, 36,400 of the NOV 24 puts, 24K of the October 25 puts, then about 14,000 of the NOV 65 calls. Interesting strike diversity there. And then 13,500 of the October 27 puts and about 12,500 of the NOV 50 calls. 5-0. Back to Tuesday, another light day, lighter than today already, and that's the whole day. 172,000 contracts on the tape on Tuesday. The most active contracts in quotes, because not a lot of activity going up, was about 10,500 of the OCK 25 puts yet again, and the OCK 28 puts with about 10,000 as well. About 8K of the OCK 32 half calls and 7,000 and change of the DEES 20 puts, 2-0. And now we go down to Monday. It was the second most active day of the week by a whopping 1,000, 318,000 contracts going up on Monday. The most active contract, yet again, 50K. So a little bit of similarity to today in terms of size of the most active contract. It wasn't the same contract, though. Today, the most active contract are 50K of the NOV 21 puts. On Monday, it was 50K of the DEES 23 puts, followed by 40,000 of the DEES 25 puts. Looks like a little bit of a roll, a little bit of vertical going up there. 16K as well of the OCK 28 puts, and about 15K of the OCK 27 puts, and about 13,000 of the OCK 30 puts. So OCK puts leading the dance for most of the days out here, outside of a few pop-ups of DEES and NOV puts for actually decent size out here this week. But otherwise, a fairly quiet week in VIX options land. Mr. Rock Lobster, anything light up your tape this week in VIX options, or any of your crazes in the pit chat spotting any interesting trades going up this week, sir?
We did. I thought there was some NOV, like 40-60 call spreads. That was a Tubby special. Somebody trying to buy a bunch of call spreads in VIX. So I think just riding, if anything, they're just riding that same, the same election crazy factor.
NOV 40-60, those were your strikes?
Yeah, I'm just checking them one more time, but it looked like it was just bullish paper for the most part. But the timing again was more. It was more again bullish. NOV after the cycle, and let me see here. It was NOV 40-60 call spread bought for $2.38. So actually, that is not a very expensive call spread. I mean, relative for VIX. But like 40 vol for VIX, we think about it like, it's just around the corner, 40 vol. It
is, particularly if you look at the futures out there. The futures like 33 and change. So the 40 handle isn't that far away, sir.
It's not, but $2.38, not small. I thought post-election puts that looked interesting to me. We were in the pit chat were the NOV quarter puts for $1. I know anything could happen. I just figure by November, maybe cooler heads prevail and the vol gets back to 20. That's kind of my thought for those puts. So I'm adding that with a little bit of index spread action. Actually, it's something we talked about. One of my students came up with the idea. I thought it was pretty good. So, but yeah, that's you kind of figure it's going to be like wild strangle action, right? Like, oh, everybody's freaking out. Like, what's VIX vol going to be on November 2nd, right? I mean, the vol could be sky high. You don't know. We might go back and laugh, like 238 for the 40-60. It's trading $3.50 right now, and VIX hasn't moved. And then the futures are totally pumped, and everybody fever pitch.
Yeah, the guy was like a genius right now.
I can't. I'm just waiting for the election day. All these people lining up with their masks. I can't vote. It's like, oh my gosh! I can just imagine how the press is going to spin this.
If that guy takes that spread off for a profit, I'm going to predict dire things for our democracy. So I'm just going to put that out there. Let's hope for our sakes that guy loses money.
Words, Nancy Pelosi will be the next president. If everything falls apart, there's a solution. So the rest of the country will work just as well as San Francisco has over the last 4 years.
There you go. I'm sure some segment of our audience would be super jazzed to have that out there. But of course, if that spread pays off, let's just all collectively root against that guy. No offense to him, but we want a little bit of saner post-election vol out there. So if he loses, we all win. I think we can make that. Unless he takes it off right now. If he's savvy, take it off right now, then everyone could be happy. He's already made his money. Get the heck out of Dodge. Let's get the heck out of VIX options as well. Move on out to a product you folks love to fade pretty regularly out there. VXX trading at a 26 right now. It's up pretty firmly from last show, even if it's given a little bit of that back today. It was up about 2.5 handles coming into today's show. Now it's up about 2.25 handles, giving a little bit of that back, still hovering right around that 26 handle right now. Not a lot of paper on the tape coming into today's showtime. VXX has been a pretty active contract. Let's see if maybe a little more has poured in since we started talking. But there were only 69,000 contracts on the tape right before the start of the show. And it has actually perked up a wee bit since we started talking. I think we talked up a little bit of VXX paper out here, Mr. Rock Lobster. That number is now up to a whopping 99,000. So just a tick shy of 100,000 contracts out there. The most active contract today are the OCK 20 puts, with about 10,000 of those bad boys going up. And then SEP 27 calls, 4,000, and Jan 60 calls also going up for about 4,000. And 4,000 exactly of the June 2021 40 calls. That's an interesting one. That surprises me a little bit. We haven't seen a lot of people playing that far out in VXX, and also to that degree to the upside. Usually they're playing that far out, they're fading it like all day long. What do you think of that one, Mr. Rock Lobster? 4,000 of the June 40 calls. Does that one make the Spidey sense, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, sir?
June 40 VXX? Oh, my gosh.
That's another one. If this guy wins, we lose collectively. As a country, as a populace, however you want to look at it. If we're at 40 in VXX in June, what the hell's going on, sir?
The futures would have to be like, I can do an estimate, but I think the futures would have to at least solidly double or go up. Like maybe a 40 or 50, because you're also going to have a year decay. So like to get all the way back up there again, like, oh my gosh. I mean, it could happen. It happened this year. So except VIX had to go to 90 in order for that to happen. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but I think it would be tougher for it to happen.
Yeah, we have a lot of trades going up today where, however, if they win, we all lose collectively. Obviously, I don't know what side this guy was on. Maybe he was writing the heck out of them, in which case hopefully he got, looks like it went up exactly mid-market. So I'd have to dig a little bit deeper to see exactly what he was up to out there. But yeah, June 40s in VXX. A lot of things have to go wrong for that trade to go right. Let's look out at the top positions in VXX land right now, see what you folks have been up to out there. Decent paper out there overall, about 1.5 million contracts open. That compares somewhat favorably to VIX these days. It's closing in on 2x there. Let's see, number 10, 17. Actually, let's play our game again in honor of the Texas meatball who's not here right now. We play a game, Mr. Rock Lobster, right? I make him guess where the first call falls in our top 10. So is it number 1? Is it number 5? Is it number 10? What do you think this week? Where do you think the first call falls in our top 10? That gives us some sense of what's going on in VXX these days, sir.
Okay. Bullish action. Wow. Where's the first call in the top 10? I have to, I have this weird, I think like the pro VXX traders are more into fading this. So I'm going to say you won't see any action in the top 10 until the first, like maybe 7/8 place for action. For
Not
the top
bad,
10.
sir. Not bad at all. It actually is number 8 for the first call on the list. Jan 25. I won't make you guess the actual call. That's a difficult task. But Jan 25 calls. Not bad. Feather in your cap. Guess what? You get to go first on the crystal ball. How nice is that for me out here? That's your dubious prize, sir. So yeah, top 10 in VXX land right now. Number 10, 17K of the OCK24 puts. Number 9, 17,600 of the OCK20 puts. Number 8, the aforementioned Jan 25 calls, 18K. If you like calls in VXX, you're gonna be disappointed this week. Not many of them. Number 7, 18K as well of the Jan 20 puts. Number 6, 18,500. Got a little bit of a theme here of the OCK27 puts. Number 5, 18,800 of our second and final call in the top 10, the Nov 40 calls. Numero Quattro here, 18,900 of the Jan 10 puts. Then we finally break into 20K. That's the Jan 22 puts. 22,000 for number 2 of the OCK22 puts. And number 1 with a very small bullet, a 22 caliber bullet out here this week. 23,600 of the Jan 15 puts. So again, a far cry from the heady days of just a month or two ago where we were seeing 100,000 lot put spreads going up in VXX. Not a lot of paper out there right now. Maybe some folks keeping their powder dry. Given all the madness going on out there, it's kind of hard to fault them out there right now, except for someone playing in those June 40 calls. Let's look really quickly at UVXY as well. At showtime, it was at about 21.5. That was up nearly 3 handles from our last show, about 2 3/4 handles. It's given a good chunk of that back as the show has progressed. Now it's about 20.90, so it's given up about 0.6 of a point. So it's still up over 2 handles, but just ever so slightly from this time last week. Again, you guys know this is not my favorite product. A few of our frequent guests on the show are big fans of it. And I think Meatball, maybe Mr. Rock Lobster, becoming more fans of it. It's kind of one of the last of the Mohegans out there right now. So if you want to play on this side of the vol space, you don't have many choices. Not many options, pun intended. And it's a decent day. The paper has picked up a little bit. It was 53,000 coming into showtime. Now it's 73,000. And the ADV is 177,000, which has ticked up about 9K. So this ADV has pretty much more than doubled since TVIX went the way of the dodo. So that's not entirely surprising out there. Mr. Rock Lobster, I know we make jokes about UVXY and SVXY out here a lot, but has your use case for these, has it grown, particularly in the wake of the death of TVIX and those products, sir?
I have to say, actually, it's gone down quite a bit. Personally, I don't really trade. We do maybe a little bit of UVXY. But the reality is, don't trust them anymore. They kind of like, I stick more to VIX and SPY, and still VXX because, again, our favorite phrase, it's predictably crappy. I think it's hard for them to manipulate that one. And also, the way the product is constructed, it doesn't lend itself to all the funk that the other ones do. So it can have difficult, but it's a long vol product, So everybody's used to the fact of how it trades. So I just actually don't even look at the other stuff too much anymore. If you want like quick action, I can see UVXY, but SVXY to me is just a total, it's it doesn't do a whole lot anymore. And to be honest, I think it's just better that that product just kind of went the way of the dodo, because it did take a lot of people to the woodshed. And I think at this point, I don't really see what the use of it is. Let's just look at the last 6 months. Okay. The last 6 months, it's had a range of 37 down to 28, rallied pretty well back up to 36, right? Another little pop at 30. So, I mean, it does move, and they have taken a lot of the ball out of it. So it makes it tough to go to zero. But I mean, the problem with that is you just don't get a lot of jazz. So even when vol went from its total vol peak to recent vol trough, the range on the product wasn't bad, 28 to 37. So that's something. That's about 14 to 10, but maybe about a 35% move bottom to top. So I mean, it does something, but I mean, from an option point of view, I think there's no reason to trade options in it. You just trade the underlying at this point. You don't get enough action in the options to really make it worthwhile anymore.
Now, I'm glad you said that, because for a while there I've been feeling like a crazy person here, because of course we have your buddy there, Mr. Short Vol, on the show a few times, and he's one of the few proponents of UVXY. And then your buddy there, the Meatball, has been talking a lot of good game about UVXY of late. And I'm with you. I kind of lost my taste for both of them post VIX-ocalypse of 2018. You can't change the rules mid-game like that and expect me to want to come in and touch your product again with a 10-foot pull. So I get why some people are still trading it, because it's kind of the only game in town right now. But I'm with you, Mr. Rocklop. So I definitely prefer a more direct approach rather than these Franken products, because we all know what happens with these things. They could change at the drop of the hat, and we're all left holding the proverbial bag out there. Let's do a quick run through of some single name vol, then we'll get into all your crazy queries out here, because there still is some single name vol out there, listeners. If you want a place to break it all down, spoiler alert, theoptioninsider.com. We got all those earnings move results, and earnings season reports. By the way, if you want to hear a great analysis and breakdown of all that stuff, coming up in about 45 minutes, I'll be live with the guy who makes those reports. So we're talking on the advisor's option. We'll do a whole great breakdown. So if you want to hear a lot of great detail about earnings, volatility, and straddles and movements, and what pays for what and what doesn't pay for what these days, which is more likely the case, then stay tuned for the advisor's option in about 45 minutes, half an hour after this show ends. All right, let's go on out to what's lighting it up here on the earnings front. Actually had some names you guys may have heard of this week, which is kind of nice. AutoZone on Tuesday, Nike, as well as KB Homes, General Mills on Wednesday. Thursday was a big day. Rite Aid, good old Rad, CarMax, Darden, the Meatball's favorite out there, Accenture, BlackBerry, a bunch of other names out there. Let's look. We have some reports for a few of them and some results reports for some of them as well. We actually have, let's see. Yeah, we have the Costco going into their report. They were pricing in about a $14 straddle, $14.12. They were at $3.44 at the stock, and they moved $10.14. So a wee bit rich out there. Let's move really quickly to the results reports, though. First, Rite Aid was at $13.35. They were pricing in, let's see, 14.5%. They actually moved nearly 17%. So a little bit of outperformance there. Darden Restaurants also on the 24th before the bell. They were at $90 even. They were pricing in 7.3%. They moved about 5.5%. So a little bit light there. Not a lot of vol apparently in the breadsticks of Olive Garden. And then we've got Accenture and a few others here lighting up the tapes out here. We also have reports coming up for next week in PepsiCo. We've got them they were at 131 even coming into this report. They were pricing in 379. In the past, they've moved 233. So actually a fair amount of juice in PepsiCo beverages. Who knew? The next central focal point of all things volatility. Got Micron next week. They're at about a 50 at their stock. They were pricing in 350, and in the past they've moved about 330. So not a lot of juice really there. Bed Bath and perhaps Beyond, the 13.35. They're on the first before the bell. They were pricing in $2. In the past, they moved to $1.85. So interesting stuff. Want to break down the season. We have all these names and a whole bunch more there. The season right now, listeners, is holding at about, well, this week was a 92%. This is the best week so far for premium buyers. You're still losing money, but you're losing less. And on the season net as a whole, we're at about a 74% average for the season, which is pretty darn bad. I think Matt has called it the worst season he's ever seen for premium buyers out there. So maybe if you're buying a lot of vol this cycle, if you ignore all of our warnings to the contrary to stay away from earnings trading, if you still insist on doing it, at the very least, pay attention to these reports because you can't beat the price. They're completely free. And now it's time for us to pay attention to you because it is time for your volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, let's get down to it. See what you guys have on your brain. We actually, since we were talking about it earlier in the show, I had our producers put out a little quick flash bowl. If you want to play along with all of our polls and get all of our insights and everything else we talk about throughout the week outside of Vol Views, follow us on the old Twitters at Options. We're at Options on most of the major social media platforms, listeners. If you do that, you can vote in flash polls like this. This is a quick one, so by the time the show airs on the podcast, you'll probably be too late. But we asked you guys, hey, last election cycle, we had a fun election night special. And should we do it again? And so far, the early voting, 100%. Mr. Rock Lobster say yes. So they want us to do an election night special. Are you down for that, sir?
I'm totally down for it. 100%. Let's see. Fox News will have a billion people watching. MSNBC will have a billion people watching, and we'll have 10 people on. But we'll do it. We'll do it.
We had a pretty good crowd last time. You know what? If you want non-political rhetoric, just breaking down the numbers and having a little bit of fun, that's what you come to us for. So I think we're going to do that. We'll start lining up. So I'm sure Dr. Bix will want to come on, and a bunch of others will want to come on, chime in throughout. We'll have it run for a few hours. I think we could tentatively commit to something like that, which I think will be kind of fun. All right. Well, this is a timely one, Mr. Rock Lobster. We were just talking about this. Jericho wants to know, why does Mark always refer to UVXY and SVXY as neutered? Well, it's because they suck. I'm just kidding, but only slightly. Yeah, they are not my favorite products for a legion of reasons. We just talked about this. They changed the terms of these contracts mid-cycle. You can't do that. It's never really been done, to my knowledge, in a major listed contract like that. Maybe some weird Pink Sheets name that had some crappy flow on it. But this was a actual product people were actually trading with some decent size, decent OI. And they just changed the rules mid-game. And once you do that, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I'm not going to be shamed this time. So, yeah, I don't like the Rock Lobster. I do not trust you. And they're neutered because they cut them in half. So the returns are effectively half of what they used to give you out there. So why would I want to take a risk on what is a neutered product? Mr. Rock Lobster, do you concur with my terminology? Are they, in fact, neutered products, sir?
I think your term of neutered, and I know the listeners will not believe, but I'll just agree with you. I think you picked a fine term there.
I've been known to use a good term every now and then. It's like I talk for a living or something, Mr. Rock Lobster.
It was like you could have used the term, they were made eunuch-like, even though that might not be as politically correct. But
that's the term you would use. And then we get all sorts of hate mail on Twitter and everything else.
Eunuch-like products.
Direct your anger to Andrew at optionpit.com.
How many people did we offend with that?
Eunuch-like. It's not even an adjective. You made it up out of whole cloth.
It's totally off the cuff.
All right, let's move on quickly from that. Let's go on. Let's see. This is a fun one. I like the handle, the Daywalker. Blade is joining us. I like that, the Daywalker. He says, does VIX call SKEW line up 1-to-1 with SPX put SKEW, since they are sister products and the demand/use cases for both are very similar? Thanks for answering. Vol Views and Advisors Option are my favorite shows on the network. Well, thank you there, Blade. Glad you could join us. If those are your two favorite shows, you're in store for a good day because they're both recording today. So stay tuned for that one in a little bit there, Mr. Daywalker. Mr. Rocklobs, this is an interesting question, because he's right. The purported use cases, and I could see why from 10,000 feet why he would think this, why he would ask this question, because 10,000 feet, some of the use cases do indeed overlap. And obviously VIX is derived from SPX volatility. So I could see on the surface why he would assume such a thing. What are your thoughts here for Mr. Daywalker, sir, and his 1-to-1 correlation between VIX call SKEW and SPX put SKEW?
I think the SKEWs, actually, I know they are different because the nature of the underlying movement is different. So VIX has a kind of that reverting sort of ceiling type movement. So that actually, if you look at the SKEW curves, I'm not going to say it's an asymptotic line or whatever, but they flatten out quite a bit on the upside over time. And then SPX is more, I would call like a linear straight line curve. So they are different because the nature of how the products move are different. There's a lot of skew in VIX, like from at the money to just the out of the money stuff. And then it levels off a little bit more at the top. And SPX is just kind of more of a straight line. That's like a general, like as time goes on, those curves change a little bit. But all curves get flatter over time the more time you put in them. So those, I would say, are the answers to those questions.
Yeah, again, I can see why he would think this. On the surface, it certainly might make some sense to some people. But again, they're different products, even though one is derived from the other. They are tradable products at the end of the day, so they have their own life. They have their own paper flow. Even if you look at, relatively very similar products like SPY and SPX, they're going to have different skews in the same month sometimes. Not markedly different, maybe a little bit of a degree here or there, but they're not going to be one-to-one because there's different paper flow in each. Big stuff, they're going to arb it out. Yeah, they're going to be similar in that respect. But or the E-mini S&P, throw that into that calculation there as well. If you go break them down month by month, there's going to be little small differences in each because they are their own products at the end of the day. And this paper going up in one that doesn't go up in the other. And you can make that analysis times 10 for what's going up in VIX. So I can see why you might think that. Blade, the Daywalker. But that is not the case. Good question, though. We like the good questions over here. As we keep on rolling into our final segment, it is time for that most difficult, most dangerous segment. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody. You know what time it is. It's time to get dangerous, to quote Darkwing Duck here. Let's look at what's going on in VIX land. First, let's see what we prognosticated this time last week. We had quite a full panel last week, with me to the upside at 27.5, or actually 27 double, which is looking pretty darn good right now, I do have to say. And then Luke Ribari was on with us from Equity Armor as well. He was at a 27, tried to cart me to the bottom, but no. And then Tom, the volatility product specialist over there at MyX, was at a 26.32. And the meatball was feeling a lot of low to the tune of 24.24. So the meatball's out. Tom's within a point as well. We're at about 27.31 in VIX cash right now. And let's see, where is ye old Spikes? Spikes looks like it's at about a 28 and a quarter. So that puts me within about almost 3/4 of a point on Spikes and about 2/10 of a point on VIX cash. So not quite a bullseye. Our bullseye used to be within 1/10 of a point, Mr. Rock Lobster. But these days, A, it's been a rough year for vol prognostication for me. So A, I'll take my victory. And B, maybe I think given how elevated vol has been this year, I think we probably should expand our goalposts a little. Maybe 1/4 of a point is a little bit nicer. 1/10 of a point in these days when VIX can move that in a microsecond, it's a little bit challenging, shall we say. So I'm going to give myself a fun bullseye with an asterisk because I'm pretty close on the VIX, not quite on Spikes, but within a handle, within our margin of victory. Luke also was pretty close, within about 1/3 of a point on VIX, within beyond a point on Spikes, so we can't hand it to him. I will take it, though. A good try, a good college try, Mr. Luke. You've earned yourself a repeat appearance there. But I did win, but Mr. Rock Lobster, I said earlier, since you won the Where's Caldo game, you get to go first. I will be charitable, even though I'm basking in the glow of my victory. I will cede the first position to you, sir. What are you prognosticating for this time next week?
Just so your listeners know, the fact that you're ceding me the first spot, and all your listeners know, by the way.
It's incredibly generous. Yeah, I agree with you.
No, and they know the reason. They know just so it's easier for you to scum me when you see what my bid for VIX is next week.
It's an act of unmitigated altruism. That's what you're going to say. I agree with you.
Your listeners are way too, they see through your conniving. They see through the conniving, right through the conniving, that you're going to lean all over my bid for VIX for this.
Some might call your umbrage eunuch-like.
Come on, listeners, you really have to bring Longo. You have to bring him down. You got to take him down a little bit. Take him down a peg on his own show.
VIX has been doing a good job of that this year so far, sir. They need no help.
I'm going to say we're trading at 27.13. I'm going to say 26.50.
26.5. So a little bit, but not a ton here for the meatball. 26.5 to the dark side out here. Let me get that put down for you so we have it in writing so no disputes can be made next week. There we go. So I was at 27 double this week, listeners. Like I said, I was pretty close to a bullseye on VIX Cash, a little bit farther away, but still within the 1 point on spikes. And, we're in that time frame. We're leading into the madness. We got people trading 40 strikes in VXX in June of next year. We got the election tumult on the horizon. So I understand why Meatball would lean or Rock Lobster would lean that way, but I don't see a lot of juice coming out of this bad boy as well. I don't normally do this, but I kind of like where I am right now. I may actually tack on a couple of points to that. I'm going to say 27 and a quarter. So going up 0.2 of a point from where I am, or where I was last week, I should say. So I'm at 27.75, and the Rock Lobster actually have a good point between us here. Point and change at 26 and a half. There we go. That's the right music for the end of the show. Of course, that music means we've come to the end, but don't worry. If you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll pump some fun stuff into the chat. I'll be back in exactly a half an hour at the advisor's option. We'll talk a lot of cool stuff going on in that side of the space, including a lot of the earnings vol breakdowns and season analysis, a lot what's going on in the volatility environment right now, SPX, all this good stuff. A lot of that popping off on that show and a lot more. So stay tuned. We'll be coming back live in exactly a half an hour with a good full panel for that one. But before we go, Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks are intrigued by any of your adjective use here on the show today and they want to learn more, where should they go? What should they do?
So if your listeners, if they're not afraid by strange made-up adjectives on the fly at any time, go to optionpit.com. Look at memberships. Look at all the cool stuff we have to do at Option Pit, and proceed from there. Think of how you want to learn how to trade vol and jump on the train.
Jump on the train. OptionPit.com is the place to go for webinars and the trading pit, the Legion, all that good stuff over there and a lot more. And of course, while you're surfing the places, head on over to MyAxeOptions.com/spikes. All that great data we're always talking about with spikes is there. The releases, so you'll know right away when the futures are back, as well as links to a cool show like Vol Views. What more could you ask for from a web page? MyAxeOptions.com/spikes is the place to go. And on behalf of the greasiest of meatballs, who is not here, he's somewhere lost in Austin in the hurricanes, and the rockingest of lobsters, and our friends over there in MyAx land, and indeed myself. I think all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing. Remember, if you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll be back in exactly a half an hour with the Director of Risk and the Oracle of New Hampshire over there, and Mr. Cott to break down all things advisors. Otherwise, if you're listening after the fact, just sit next on your device of choice, and you'll get there. And we'll see you back here next time for more Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MyAx, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MyAx is now trading options on the Spikes Volatility Index, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with Spikes. Learn more about Spikes at www.myaxoptions.com/spikes. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for information purposes only and are not intended to provide and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.